I warned him again and again, the insurer will screw you. But Frank thought he was smarter than me. Weeks later, millions were lost, and he tried to pin it on me. What he didn't know was that I'd already prepared my move, the one that would save the company and end his career. If you've ever been underestimated or had someone try to throw you under the bus, you'll love this story. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments, because today's tale is about justice, timing, and watching arrogance collapse on itself. Let's dive in. I was nearly 40, over a decade into legal practice, when I realized one piece of advice from my student days would define my career. An older lawyer once told me, "A lawyer has 3 duties: first to himself, second to the court, and last, the client. Always protect yourself first, because clients, they'll throw you under the bus without thinking twice." At the time, I thought he was just cynical. But years later, his words came back to haunt, and then save me. My client was a mid-sized company with a decent real estate portfolio. One of their buildings burned down, and they wanted to collect on the insurance. Simple enough, except they put Frank in charge. Frank was pushing 60. He had that stubborn old-timer confidence, convinced he knew everything. He loved 2 things: acting like the smartest guy in the room and cutting legal fees. Every time I spoke to him, he bragged about how much money he saved the company by not calling lawyers. The fire loss, he said he had it under control. The adjuster was his buddy. Lawyers, he scoffed, were a waste of money. I told him flatly, the insurer is going to screw you. They've been stringing you along with forms and delays. Unless you sue, they won't pay. Frank brushed me off. Relax, I know what I'm doing. But I knew what he did. In insurance companies love dragging things out until the limitation period expires. Once that happens, game over. You can't sue, and they'll laugh you out of the room. I begged him to act. I sent email after email, first, weeks in advance, then days before the deadline, and finally, one last desperate warning before I left for a trial. Once this period expires, you're done. If I can't reach you, hire another firm and sue. Do not wait. Frank ignored every single one. The clock ran out. Months passed. I assumed, maybe, just maybe, he pulled it off. Then the call came. Hey, remember that fire insurance thing we talked about? I braced myself for smug gloating. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. Dead silence. Then, could you send me a copy of the claim you filed? My stomach dropped. He hadn't sued. And worse, he was trying to pretend he told me to. Minutes later, an email landed Frank claiming he instructed me to sue and that he was just following up. The desperation oozed through every word. I replied coldly, so the insurer refused to pay, exactly as I warned. And now, since the limitation has expired, they told you to jump in the lake. That's what happened, isn't it? I knew he'd try to throw me under the bus. That's why I pulled out my secret weapon. Hey, remember that fire insurance thing we talked about? I braced myself for smug gloating. So they paid out. That's great, Frank. Dead silence. Then, could you send me a copy of the claim you filed? My stomach dropped. He hadn't sued. And worse, he was trying to pretend he told me to. Minutes later, an email landed Frank claiming he instructed me to sue and that he was just following up. The desperation oozed through every word. I replied coldly, so the insurer refused to pay, exactly as I warned. And now, since the limitation has expired, they told you to jump in the lake. That's what happened, isn't it? I knew he'd try to throw me under the bus. That's why I pulled out my secret weapon. I CC'd not just Frank, but his boss, his boss's boss, and Bill, the company's in-house counsel. Bill called me within hours. Frank's story doesn't add up. He's in the hot seat. They confronted him in a boardroom. His excuses collapsed instantly. If he'd told me to sue, why was he still emailing the insurer himself? Why were my warnings so detailed, so urgent? The truth was undeniable. Frank ignored every warning, cost the company millions, and tried to cover it up. That's when I delivered the hammer blow. Actually, I already filed a claim. Here's the copy. I emailed it to Bill. His sigh of relief was almost audible through the phone. Thank God. Can you take it from here? Oh, I could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and victory was guaranteed. A few days later, I got another call from someone new at the company. Turns out Frank had been called into a special meeting. They handed him a one-page letter, gave him a box for his desk things, and security escorted him out in front of everyone. That was it. A decades-long career, gone in a single humiliating walk past his coworkers. Frank was too old to land another decent job. For him, it was life-changing in the worst way. For me, it was vindication. Frank had spent years nickel and diming me, acting superior, ignoring every warning. In the end, his arrogance nearly destroyed his company and cost him everything. I wasn't even trying to ruin him, but when he tried to throw me under the bus, my preparation made sure he fell into the hole he dug for himself. The best part, the man who replaced him was respectful, calm, competent, and never argued about fees. It was like night and day. Sometimes revenge isn't a plotted scheme. It's simply letting arrogant people hang themselves with the rope they refuse to stop tugging on. My job was just to make sure the company survived. Frank, he wrote his own ending. What do you think? Was this justice or just karma doing its work? Share your thoughts below. And if you've ever had a boss, coworker, or client try to blame you for their screw up, tell me your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more satisfying tales of revenge where justice gets the last word.